What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Active Self-Protection Extra. I am Christopher Bean with Tactical Advantage, and today we're going to talk about the bill drill.
The Storm Hunter WX weather app is free to download and use and provides you with warning of severe weather even before the National Weather Services issue alerts. This advanced weather app is an important tool for awareness of severe weather that I use every day. Download and use it totally free without in-app purchases on iOS or Android at the link below.
So, we've gone through the steps or the chunks of the draw and how to get that as consistent and efficient as we can. So the natural progression is really to kind of talk through and see where do we go from there. So the majority of the Active Self-Protection team is actually training with Gabe White this weekend. So it gave me a little bit of inspiration to kind of talk through how we can apply the draw in dry fire complete exercises. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. And with that being said, I thought it made a lot of sense to kind of just go through kind of Gabe White's core skills tests. And really we'll start with the bill drill. So I'll give you guys some ideas on how I actually dry fire a bill drill, some tips and tricks to kind of get you through and help that work better for you, at least what's worked better for me. And we'll actually use some par times to kind of align with what Gabe White does in his PSS class to give you an idea of what those different things look like. So still running a full-size target, but I'm going to be roughly, 3 yards or so away, just because to get it framed at like the larger distance would be really, really hard. So give me a little grace there, and we'll actually go through and talk about what that looks like. So first things first, let's talk about the bill drill. The bill drill is presenting and running 6 shots or shooting 6 shots to alpha. So this larger portion of a target right here, and there's just a bunch of time standards that relate to that, but more so it's about what can you currently do and what is the gun communicating to you during that more sustained course of fire. It's a really, really useful drill. One of my favorites, honestly, because you get to run fast, you get to run multiple shots, and you really get to talk to your gun. So really, Gabe has a couple setups here on how he targets a hierarchy of performance. So the dark pin, the light pin, and the turbo pin. So give me 1 second, let me check my notes. The dark pin is actually 3.5 seconds. The light pin is 2.5 seconds, and the turbo pin is 2 seconds. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of try and run those and see what it looks like to completely understand kind of what the gun is telling me at those different times. So the first thing we're gonna try is at 3.5 seconds. But I'll give you guys a couple little tips that I kind of start with when I present for a bill drill, and this goes back to kind of what we talked about in the draw series. I can actually purposely put the gun where I want on that presentation to help lead me through an exercise. With that being said, when I present for a bill drill, I kind of try and present at the lower part of an A zone. Not the extreme lower part, but like how this one has a B8 on it, maybe between the 9 and the 8 or around the 8. And that allows me a little bit more room to kind of handle recoil and still be within the acceptable target area. So with that, I think I've got a 3.5 second par already set up. So what I will show you, since we actually probably will, I have an empty magazine, and I have an empty gun with a laser cartridge in the gun. I cannot find my barrel block to save my life. But with that said, let's go ahead and run a couple. A couple things I want you to notice. Watch the gun if you can. So I'm actually gonna simulate or actually pull the trigger 6 times. The trigger's not gonna reset, and that's okay. I think we get wrapped around the axle about that. What I will do is hit that trigger as hard as I can to see how much the gun moves while I'm doing that. So we can't simulate recoil. but in my opinion, recoil control is a little bit overrated in relation to performance shooting. We get very, very, very much wrapped thinking about, well, the gun can't move. The gun's gonna move. But really what's causing shot issues is moving the gun while we're pulling the trigger, not the motion of the gun under recoil. So dry firing these drills, especially when you put time constraints on it, lends itself to actually being able to perform better when you do these live. So with that being said, again, pay attention to how much the gun's moving, how much or how exaggerated my trigger pull actually is, because I want it to be like worst case scenario. Under stress, you know, my finger will completely be coming off the trigger, actually hitting the front of the trigger guard, because I want to see, is my grip strong enough to overcome that anomaly, if that makes sense. So with that said, let's give a shot at 3.5. One, two, three, four, five, six. Okay. So that was a little bit past par. So let's try and clean that up a little bit. One, two, three, four, five, six. That was about dead on. One more time. Hopefully you can see my trigger finger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that was presenting right about here for demonstration purposes. As we go a little bit quicker, I'll start driving it down, but really what I'm paying attention to is what is my dot or what are my sights telling me during those trigger presses. So I'm going to try and do one more really exaggerated with trigger presses. One, two, three, four, five, six. So the third shot, I'm actually getting a deviation of about like that. And it's kind of going around in a circular motion like that. And at this distance, that would, again, exaggerate by a factor of about 3 at 7 yards to be about that, which would still be acceptable for what we're trying to do. So that's what the 3.5 looks like. Let's go and take a peek at what 3 looks like. .0. And so we're only shaving about a half a second, but we're going to have to be a little bit more deliberate. One, two, three, four, five, six. So actually, since I run at speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A little more often, the actual deviation of my dot is less when I go faster. Let's do that one more time. One, two, three, four, five, six. Okay. So we know we've got that pretty clean. So let's kind of try and run it at 2. Now at 2, you basically need about a 1 second draw and about 0.20 splits. The split is the moment in time or the measurement of time between shots. So this, you're gonna have to work your trigger finger significantly harder. So about like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now I'm gonna actually start presenting lower. Because when I do this in the real world, I know the gun's gonna be a little bit more active. So I wanna give myself a little bit more room. I do not have a tendency to drive low. I do have a tendency to let the gun run high. All right, 2 seconds. Okay, so let's give that a whirl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One, two, three, four, five, 6. All right, hopefully you guys can see my trigger finger. I just don't have a multi-camera setup to get a real close shot at it, but I want you guys to see I'm exaggerating that. I want to try and move the gun. That tells me how to kind of correct my grip. So when I'm actually doing this live, there's a lot less quake going on. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so that one was pretty good. That was right on this number 9 right there. So now at this point, once you get used to this, what I normally do, especially when I'm trying to ramp up to meet a personal best, I'll start over the course of maybe a week or every couple days, I'll start taking off tenths. So right now we have a 2-second par. I would actually try and go to maybe a 1.9, a 1.8, a 1.6, things like that, and to start slowly shaving away time until I get to the point where I'm not really controlling it as well as I should. So the wheels kind of start falling off. That's really how you start learning to see faster and how to make corrections in your presentation or your technique at speed. So when you go to do this in the real world, you have such a depth of skill that meeting a particular metric is not really hard for you. So what we'll probably try and do right now, just because it's been a bit, let's go down to say maybe a 1.8. And I'm still gonna enunciate the shots. That's just to communicate to you guys. I don't always do that, but I do have a tendency to count in my head. But it's more for you guys to kind of hear the kind of motion that my trigger's having to make to meet these par times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Let's try that one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm still, my dot's still communicating with me, and it's staying right about in here. So roughly about a 1-inch kind of circle. And my dot does have a tendency to kind of just move around like that in an elliptical kind of fashion. So I think we can probably push a little bit faster. So let's go to a 1.6, which this is about going to be my peak, where things start going a little bit wonky because I'm really pushing. One, two, three, 5, 6. All right, so making it, but I've got a lot more deviation, more diagonal in fashion. That's a hard word to say on a Sunday morning. So we're going to try that again, see if we can clean it up. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Okay, that was a little bit better. That was vertical dot motion. One, two, three, 5, 6. That was much better. A little bit of hyper extension and a little bit of wobble at the end of the presentation. But that's really what we're trying to learn. Like what's happening when we're pushing past our comfort zone. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. A little bit bad grip. So we can kind of check that right there. You see how I don't really have any meat behind the back strap of the gun. I probably would have been able to ride that pony, but still, that's not really what we want. So let's go down to 1.4. I know I'm probably not going to be able to make this, but we're just going to try. Nope. Got a little excited. Let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Okay, so that actually wasn't bad from what my dot was telling me. One, two, three, 5, 6. So I think hopefully you can see the muzzle's moving around a little more than it did before. I still think I'm within the acceptable cone of making this work, but definitely pushing. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So that we're kind of moving right around in here somewhere. So that might have resulted in like an upper right Charlie if we were doing this at distance in live fire. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not bad. So let's see. We know we're kind of pulling that off at 1.4. Let's go down to 1.2. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we know we're missing that by about 0.2. So we got to be a little quicker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Close. Nope. So you see we're starting to get anomalous action going on at this speed. So that's good. We know we're pushing. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Okay, that one probably would have been pretty good, and the dot was still talking to us. So now we pushed all the way from 3.5 to 1.2 seconds. We can clearly see and communicate with the gun at 1.2 seconds. So let's go back to 2 really quick. And that'll give you an idea of why I stretch like this. Once you get 1.2, whatever these numbers are for you, 1.5, 2, 3.5, it doesn't really matter. But once you stretch and you go back to your known metric, everything just seems a little bit easier. So back at 2, one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you see we met that pretty easily, and the gun was just very, very stable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Easy. That was even a little bit more controlled on the splits than before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right on. So that's really how I practice the build drill. Again, a couple quick tips. I present relatively low to allow the gun ample area to rise, and really just learning to stretch. Stretch, return to your known point, stretch, return to your known point, and just start shaving off time just little by little. That's how you build skill. So next week we'll actually go into another one of his drills, and I'll give you some other ideas on how I approach those and how I push in practice to make that work for me when I go to perform it in real time. So keep up the great work, everybody. Thanks. I'll see you next time.